Hare Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokula Nanda Radha Gokula Nanda Radha Gokula Nanda Shri Radhe Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada Nitya Gaura Haribol 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 Nitya Gaura Haribol. Shri Radha Gokulananda ki, Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Gornitai ki, Srila Jagat Guru Prabhupada ki, Nitai Go Pramanande. Hare Krishna. So, welcome to this evening's Bhagavad Gita class. This will be taking place from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and after that we'll be having the Guru Arati. So thank you all so much for those that are here present in the temple room and those that are watching online. Hare Krishna. So usually before we start any discussion, whether that is the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, we always start with a short invocation. So I'll start with a short invocation and then we'll get into the chapter, a short discussion. Om Jnanatimandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschachade Shatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki. So this evening we're reading from chapter 1, the Bhagavad Gita, which is entitled Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. And the text that we'll be discussing on, it's quite a lengthy text, text 32 to 35. So I'll do my best to read it in Sanskrit, and then we'll be going through Srila Prabhupada's transliteration and translation and the purport. So please bear with me. Before I start this class, we're all very privileged to be able to sit and to share and to discuss, but really and truly, it's also of our own purification, my own purification at least to speak of. So I start with a little pranam. Vanchakalpa turubhishcha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anantakoti Vaishnavindaki. So I'll do my best. And so I'm very grateful. Kim no rajena govinda Kim Bhoge Jivite Nava Yesham Arti Kangshitam no Rajyam Bhoga Sukhani Cha Taime Vashita Yude Pranam Tayak Vadana Nincha Achaya Petara Putras Tateva Cha Pitamaha Matula Sura Potraha Shayalaha Sambadinas Tata etanna hantum ichami ganato pi madhusudan api trailokya rajyasya heto kimnu mahi krite nihatya dar tarashtrana kaprita syaj janardana. So it's a very long one. So we'll be reciting the transliteration. So just if you could repeat after me. Kim, what use? So I'll say the Sanskrit and then you repeat the Sanskrit and then I say the English and you repeat the English. So Kim, what use? Na, to us. Rajyena is the kingdom. Govinda, O Krishna. Kim, what? Bhoge, enjoyment. Jivetena, living. Va, either. Yesham, of whom. Arte, for the sake. Kangshitam, is desired. Na, by us. Rajam, kingdom. Bhoga, material enjoyment. Sukhani, all happiness. Cha, also. Te, all of them. Ime, these. Avashita, situated. Yude, on this battlefield. Pranan, lives, lives. Tyaktva, giving up. Danani, riches. Cha, also. Acharya, teachers. Pitara, fathers. Putra, sons. Tata, as well as. Eva, certainly. Cha, we're nearly getting there, by the way. Also. Pitamaha, grandfathers. Matula, maternal uncle. Svasura, fathers-in-law. Potra, grandsons. Shyala, brothers-in-law. Sambandina, relatives. Tata, as well as. Etan, all these. Na, never. Hantum, to kill. Ichami, do I wish. Gnata, being killed. Api, even. Madhusudan, O killer of the demon Madhu. Krishna. Api, even if. Trailokya, of the three worlds. Rajyasya, for the kingdom. Heto, in exchange. Kimnu, what to speak of. Mahi, krite, for the sake of the earth. Nihatya, by killing. Dhatarashtran, the sons of Dhritarashtra. Na, our. Ka, what. Priti, pleasure. Shyat, will there be. Janardana, O maintainer of all living entities. Jai. So that was quite a long transliteration. It's actually 4 verses, so we went through all that. So translation, O Govinda, of what avail to us our kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them? Even though they might otherwise kill me, O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds. Let alone this earth, what pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra? Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki. Arjuna has addressed Lord Krishna as Govinda, because Krishna is the object of all pleasure for cows and the senses. By using this significant word, Arjuna indicates that Krishna should understand what will satisfy Arjuna's senses. But Govinda is not meant for satisfying our senses. If we try to satisfy the sense of Govinda, however, then automatically our senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy his senses, and he wants God to be the order supplier for such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the sense of living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covet. But when one takes the opposite way, namely, when one tries to satisfy the sense of Govinda without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then by the grace of Govinda, all desires of the living entities are satisfied. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here, partly due to his natural compassion for them. He is therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed on a battlefield, and he will be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation of material life. The transcendental life, however, is different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desire of the Lord, he can, Lord willing, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept a farthing. Arjuna did not want to kill his relatives, and if there were any need to kill them, he desired that Krishna kill them personally. At this point, he did not know that Krishna had already killed them before their coming into the battlefield, and that he was only to become an instrument for Krishna. This fact is disclosed in the following chapter. As a natural devotee of the Lord, Arjuna did not like to retaliate against his miscreant cousins and brothers, but it was the Lord's plan that they should all be killed. The devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoers, but the Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by the miscreant. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotee. Therefore, the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjuna wanted to excuse them. Namo Vishnupadaya, Krishna Prashnaya Bhutale, Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami. Hare Krishna. So we have only 40 minutes. Let's see. Whenever I'm planning a Bhagavad Gita class, it's like I really overdo it in terms of writing, and then it's very difficult to fit in all the subject matters, but I'll try my best. So, Hare Krishna. Please bless me that I may say something useful. So when I was reading this particular chapter, one thing that really stood out for me was when Arjuna said, O Govinda, of what avail to us our kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those whom we desire for are not arrayed in this battlefield? So when I was reading this particular verse, one thing that really summarized and came to my mind is, what is happiness? If we practically look at the whole world around us, we look at civilization today, the reason why that the standard of living is continuously increasing more and more and more and more is because people are searching and they're in the pursuit for happiness. Everybody wants to be happy. And so the natural byproduct, the natural outcome of that is that people are always looking and searching for ways in which to improve their livelihood, to improve their convenience, to improve the way things work in the world. But as a result of it, we also see in correlation to that actually there has never been a time like there is today where people are the most dissatisfied, the most uncontent with their life, with their way of living, with their relationship, with even their spiritual life. So when we think about happiness, it may sound good, but actually happiness in the material world simply means the absence of suffering. Happiness simply means the absence of suffering. The senses are described as a network of an illusion. So illusion in Sanskrit, we can name it Maya, illusion. So we may be engaged in particular activities. We may be engaged in a particular course of path. And for a short period of time, we may feel happy because that's what the senses are making us to believe. But what happens is that actually in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that happiness and distress are like the season of winter and summer. It comes and goes. So happiness is the absence of suffering, and when there's suffering, then there's no happiness. So that's something that we must be clear on. That is something that we must make a distinction of. That whatever happiness I'm experiencing right now, if it's not connected to Krishna, then it's just a very short-term lived happiness. And there is bound to come struggle, pain, and suffering. So, and the reason why I say this is because actually when we are in this human body, when we have this human mind, when we're living according to the philosophy that I am the body, what we fail to make a distinction of most of the time is that we don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. So we all have a narrative in our mind. That narrative is that I want to be happy. And so therefore what we actually develop is something called self-serving bias. And that means when we look at the world around us and how we function and maneuver around it, whatever we do, we're always looking for ways into discovering and finding things, statements, situations, whatever it is that suits our own senses, our own selfishness, things that satisfy us, that makes us happy. So we're always sort of trying to figure this out. We're always trying to explore this. We're always trying to identify this and experiment with this. And so therefore it is really absolutely important to realize that we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. Often then you may find that sometimes people are in toxic relationship because they're attached to their narrative, that they're not willing to get out of that toxic relationship. Often you may find that people are in toxic friendship, but they're not willing to get out because of that narrative in their mind, in their consciousness. So it is really important, and that's why I always encouraged myself and I always encourage devotees that we need to get into the habit of journaling. We need to get into the habit of writing our thoughts down, because then we're able to evaluate it, we're able to distinct it, we're able to see where it is that it is becoming detrimental to our spiritual progress, to our mental well-being, to our emotional well-being. Otherwise, we're going to continue selling ourselves the same story, believing that one day it may become true. So, and it's really important that, you know, in this material world that we're living, and Srila Prabhupada always mentioned that there is enough for our need, but not enough for our greed. And so, therefore, if we don't evaluate what our motivation for life is, for where we're going is, and based on what, then we'll always struggle for existence. We'll always struggle in this life. We'll always find difficulties and challenges along the path. There'll always be challenges and difficulties. But I always tell people that the greatest loss in life is not, or the greatest difficulty in life, the greatest loss in life is not death, is not the hardship that you're going through, is what you allow to die inside while still alive. Every day there is difficulties. Every day there's challenges. Every day there's an opposition. Every day there's a temptation. But what it is like I said, it's like summer and winter. It comes and goes. But the most important thing is, have I learned something? Have I taken something Krishna conscious about my circumstances and situations? And if we haven't, then the same situations and circumstances will keep reoccurring until we learn. And this is where often devotees and people get discouraged and disheartened. Why me? Why is this happening to me? But instead of why me, why is this happening to me, what can I learn from it? And when I can learn something from it, then it doesn't necessarily have to be a reoccurring situations and circumstances in our life. It allows us to be able to evolve our consciousness, edify our consciousness, and elevate our consciousness. So every situation is there to help us to introspect, to see and identify what is going on in our mind that we don't necessarily see on day-to-day basis. We can go our whole life practicing Krishna consciousness. We can go our whole life practicing spiritual life, feeling like we're making progress, feeling like we're making advancement. But what is going on in the consciousness? What is going on in the heart? These are the things that we need to ask ourselves. Otherwise, external practice, only so much far it can take us. Only so much progress that we can make. Along with our external progress, we must also see that we're making internal progress, that we're actually experiencing internal revolution, or an evolution, you may say. And so that's why it's so important. Difficulties and challenges are not there to break us. It can break us if we allow it to, but it's there to help us evolve. It is help it to grow closer, to come closer to our relationship with the Supreme Lord. So it's really interesting. We've read this particular verse, but then later on in few verses in chapter 2, Krishna tells Arjuna, how have these impurities come upon you? So Arjuna's been asking all these questions to try and avoid his destiny in life, which was to fight, to avoid that destiny. So then Krishna says, how have these impurities come upon you? They are not befitting a man who knows the value of life. So like I said earlier on, happiness and distress is like the season of winter and summer. It comes and goes. And if we continue lamenting about the things of the past, and if we continue following with our anxiety of what is to come in the future, then, hear this out, we will always miss out on the value of life. There's once a saying that people worry so much about the future and lament so much about the past. Their consciousness is always drawn from one side to another side that they actually miss what is the most important thing, which is to be present. In this moment, how can I grow in Krishna consciousness? In this moment, how can I add the most value into my existence in this moment? So time is the most valuable asset. Time is the most valuable jewel. Time is the most valuable thing because the time that we lose, we can't get it back. So the question is, where are we investing our time in? Who are we investing our time with? What are we investing time doing? What are we learning? How are we evolving? These are the questions that we must ask ourselves. Otherwise, we can go our whole life through an autopilot. We go through our whole life just existing, never understanding what living is. And that's what Krishna consciousness teaches. Krishna consciousness teaches the art to live. Unfortunately, in the Western culture that we live in, the philosophy, the culture is that you're going to die, just enjoy. Just do whatever you're going to do. Just be whatever you want to be, do whatever you want to do without any sort of consciousness as to what the repercussion for that may be, not just materially, but also spiritually. The spiritual repercussion that awaits us. So this is the very difference. And so it's really, really important. It's really important that that we make the most out of time. And how do we make the most out of time? We make the most out of time by educating ourselves. So therefore, when we look at the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna spent the first chapter. How many of you have read the Bhagavad Gita, by the way? So that's a very good question first to start with. A little bit. So when you look at the first chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks all these questions like, why should I fight? Why should I do this? Why should I do that? But then earlier on, what was I saying? That often we go through our life living with the mentality of self-serving bias. That we ask questions and we do things not because we're seekers of the truth, but because we're seekers of sense gratification. And this sense gratification can actually fall into so many different categories. It doesn't necessarily have to be gross, that I just want to enjoy. It could be subtle. Actually, sometimes we can even be in spiritual life and we can be doing it for our own sense gratification. That I just want to enjoy. I want to be happy. I want to do this. I want to do that. Now, if our entire existence and life continuously revolves around just simply what I want, and often we don't get what we want, then life becomes very frustrating. we wind up with so many disappointments, and sometimes we even doubt the process of spiritual life because I'm not getting what I've expected for. So expectation, majority of the time, transforms into frustration. It transforms into disappointment. And what it does is that it also weakens our faith, because we had a certain expectation and that expectation wasn't fulfilled. And so now it's like, Shishi Radha Gokulananda ki, Shishi Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shishi Gornitai ki. So when we have expectation, these expectations can also weaken our faith. So it's really important that when we come into spiritual life, we come with a sense of humility. We come with a sense of grace, with eagerness that we want to learn the truth. We want to identify the truth, explore the truth, learn the truth, and practice the truth. Not that I'm looking for solutions and answers in order to relieve myself of my own personal problems and issues. Because if we simply practice spiritual life just to relieve temporary problems, there'll always be more problems. Because we're not getting to the roots of the dilemma. We're not getting to the roots of the issues. We're not getting to the roots of the problems. Spiritual life can be utilized in both ways. You can either practice it because you want to relieve yourself from temporary problems that you're experiencing, temporary suffering, but how long will that last? Or you can try and really sort of delve into the root of what the problem of your existence is and transform that, so that therefore your happiness isn't always dependent on external factors. Your happiness is something that has evolved, something that has become born from within. And that's what it is in life. We will always experience calamities. We will always experience challenges. These are things that we cannot escape from. Many people, Walt Disney, when he passed away, he said that, let my brain be freezed in a freezer. And then later on in life, when humanity, civilization comes up with a way of becoming immortal, then please bring me back to life. But then what happened? The whole electricity went out and he passed away anyway. So there's always dilemmas, there's always problems, there's always challenges along the path, things that we cannot escape from. So therefore, the goal of life is not how can I utilize spiritual life just to experience temporary happiness and relief from my dilemmas and issues and perplexities of life, but how can I actually evolve depth within myself? Because when we develop depth, then we don't get washed around by the ocean of calamity and challenges and problems and issues. Depth means, like, when you look at the ocean, it's so deep. And the deeper that it goes, the more still that it is, no matter what tsunami or whatever is going on the surface. And so that's something of an aspiration that we can also try and aspire for in our life. That the further depth that we develop in our spiritual life, the more challenges we go through in life, it doesn't affect our faith, our relationship with Krishna. It doesn't affect the peace that we have within us. And that's the most important element. That's the most important thing. We can't control what is outside of us. We're not the controller of our outcome, of what's to come, what's to happen in life. Change is unpredictable. It's inevitable. Difficulties are unpredictable. They're inevitable. It'll happen at any time, anywhere, in any way. But what we can do about it is that we can try and develop depth within ourselves. And that's what really the Bhagavad Gita is about. Like, did you know the average person actually spends 35 hours per week working really, really hard? And in that lifetime, he changes his career at least 12 times. And why? Because he's laboring so hard for a sense of security, a sense of safety, a sense of happiness and peace. So he spends more than half of his life laboring for these things, working so hard for these things. And he's so blinded by emotions that he's incapable of just logically thinking that I'm working so hard for all these things, but it can be taken away from me at any time. So why am I investing so much energy and resources into these things when I can be injecting that same energy and resources in establishing my relationship with Krishna? So now don't get me wrong. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita is not saying that become completely aloof. become completely detached from your responsibilities in life. That's irresponsible. To become completely detached from your responsibility is irresponsible. But Krishna is saying, actually become more responsible than you already are. And what does that mean? Taking responsibility not only for your material duties, but also for your spiritual calling, your spiritual duty. And when you can somehow or another simultaneously harness the two together, always centering Krishna around your existence and in your activities and whatever you do, then regardless of whatever activities you are engaged in, whatever the outcome may be, whatever sickness that may befall you, whatever happiness that may befall you, you will always remain equal posed. Because that's the reality of life. The reality of life is that good things may happen to us today, and then later on it may wind up becoming terrible things, and terrible things may happen to us today and it may wind up being the best things later on in our life. But nevertheless, we must be equal posed. We must try and find some balance in our life. Otherwise, we'll always be swayed by our senses, our emotions, which is described to be like a monkey jumping from one tree to another. Never satisfied, never happy, always struggling. So, difficulties and challenges are there to remind us of one thing. They're there to enlighten us of one thing, and that is, what is the purpose of life? This is the one question that everyone asks. They say that the two most important day of one's life is the day that they're born and the day that they find out why. What is the purpose of life? What is the purpose of our existence? And our existence, Srila Prabhupada, in many, many times in the Bhagavad Gita, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, he writes that our purpose of life is more than just eating, mating, and defending. It is more than just, having a very sort of palatable plate, having a nice comfort bed, having a nice vehicle to drive around. It's more than that. If we make the entire sole purpose of our existence just to improve our convenience, then what happens is that we fall short in our relationship and our connection with Krishna. And that is the most important thing. You see, society, if you look at it right now, it's become faithless. It's become godless. Because society's God has become technology. Society's God has become, how can we improve our sleep? How can we improve the quality of what we eat? How can we improve how we can defend ourselves, how we can defend our family, our relatives, our treasure, our wealth? All these things. But without Krishna at the center, we will always be in anxiety. Without Krishna in the center, we will always panic. No matter what the quality of our living may be. No matter what the standard of our living may be. So we need to make life more than just about basic necessity. We should make it more than just about that. We should try and focus that there's also a spiritual aspect of it. So Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous types of fear. So Prabhupada said once to his disciples that I have my plan, you have your plan, but Krishna also has his plan. But the most important thing when I discovered this is that it doesn't just end there. Krishna has his plan, but then also Maya has plans. So you see in the Krishna book, there's this beautiful, and Prabhupada wrote a very beautiful poetry about this, where he said, whether it's success or failure, I am a puppet, Krishna, make me dance as you wish. So actually every single one of us, as long as we're in this material world, we're always influenced by the modes of material nature. If you can imagine like a hand with the strings on it, and that string is attached to you, that's what our life really is. We're always following one direction or the other. Whether we're dancing under the direction of Krishna, whether we're dancing under the direction of Maya, that is down to our personal choice. Where do we choose to invest the most time in? What do we choose to invest our effort in? So it's really important. We're never independent as we may think to believe we are. We're always being influenced in one way or another, whether it's Krishna conscious or Maya conscious. So it's really important to remember that. And when we surrender to Krishna, when we give our life to Krishna, when we dance under the direction of Krishna, then you never realize actually Krishna is our greatest well-wisher. In life, you may come across many people that say they care about you, and they may do. They may care about your mental well-being. In life, you may come across a lot of people that may say that they care about you, and yes, they may care about your physical well-being. But the beauty of Krishna is that he cares about your spiritual well-being. That is the beauty of Krishna. Krishna is so amazing, Krishna is so beautiful that he cares so much about your spiritual well-being that he's even sent devotees. He sent devotees to guide you. Not only that, Krishna is so amazing that he's manifested as Paramatma within your heart in order to guide you in executing devotional service. So then therefore that you can become purified and you can come closer to him. It hurts nobody more than it hurts Krishna to see the fact that we are in this material world, we are in this existence, we think we're enjoying, we think we're happy, but in reality we're suffering. We're so restricted, we're so limited, we're encapsulated, and we don't even know it because we're so blinded by what we think happiness is. So it hurts nobody like it hurts Krishna. And that's why he desperately wants us more than we want him. So it's really, really important that we understand that nobody is more of our well-wisher than Krishna is. And Krishna is so kind that, he's personally manifested as the super soul within us, and he's personally come in as devotees, as a spiritual master, in order to guide us and to help us to find our path back to him. So therefore, it's really important to remember every single day we have a choice to make. Every day we have a decision to make. Do I want to become more Krishna conscious, or do I want to gratify my senses? And like I said earlier on, gratifying our senses, the thing is, just because we choose the path of the least resistance, it doesn't mean that we're going to wind up with less problems. Sometimes the path of least resistance actually means more problems. It means more entanglement. So difficulties are good, and if we don't face them with courage, with bravery, with prayers, praying to Krishna to empower us to be able to deal with these challenges, then we will have to deal with them later on, but in a more ineffective way. And we may not even learn our lesson. So it's really, really important. Every day we're given a choice. Do we want to satisfy our selfish desire, or do we want to satisfy the desire of Krishna? And Krishna is so amazing. Actually, if we look at later on, a few chapters later in the Bhagavad Gita, when he shows the universal form to Arjuna, and Arjuna sees that all the Kurus are being completely wiped. So then Arjuna is like, how could this be? And then Krishna explains to Arjuna that, Arjuna, look, all these people were going to die anyway. They were going to be annihilated anyway. And all you have to do is you have to simply become an instrument. So we may have an idea of what the success plan for our life is, but Krishna has a greater success plan for us. Krishna has a greater success plan for us, but are we willing to surrender? Are we willing to enter into the realm of the unknown and just have complete faith, just like Srila Prabhupada did when he went to America? Are we willing to do that? And how do we do that? We do that through developing what is called our sankalpa. So this Krishna consciousness process is so beautiful. Srila Prabhupada is so amazing. He's given us the most perfect process, which is the process of sadhana bhakti. So I asked, how many of you read? Why is reading so important? Because when we read, we're actually evolving our consciousness. We're elevating our consciousness. We no longer see the material world for how it is indoctrinated within us to see, but we see the material world for what Krishna is explaining it to be. And who is a greater source of truth than Krishna? Who is a greater seeker of truth than Arjuna? These are the perfect individuals, you can say. Krishna has all the perfect answer, and Arjuna has all the perfect questions. So when we read, then we actually understand what it means to ask the right questions. Then we actually begin to understand what it means to seek the truth. Then we actually understand what it means to live. Then we actually understand what this world really is. We don't get fooled and blinded by the temporary temptation, the external looks of things. We understand that people are suffering. And we need to elevate our consciousness. We need to grow. We need to become more mature. And in that way, we also need to become givers of spiritual wisdom, But how can we give what we don't have? So that's why it's important to read. Reading elevates our consciousness. Reading renovates our consciousness. And we start to see ourselves for what we are. A spark of the greatest spark, which is the Lord. Not only reading, that process then includes chanting. Like I said, every single day we have a narrative in our mind. And believe it, whether you've been practicing spiritual life for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, once Srila Prabhupada, it says that a lot of people in this movement, they try and be humble. But humility doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It means it doesn't mean thinking less. It means thinking less about yourself. So it doesn't mean thinking less of yourself, putting yourself down, but it means thinking less about yourself. And that is such a fine line. Sometimes devotees are trying to practice humility, but in that process, they start actually knocking down their own self-confidence. So therefore, it's really, really important. Chanting, what it does is that it allows us to change the narrative of our mind. We all have a narrative. I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not. And it's not in a positive way. Sometimes, a lot of the time, it can also be in a negative way. So what chanting does, it allows us to change that narrative. That, whatever good that devotees see in me, whatever good that people see in me, my parents see in me, my children see in me, whatever, all those quality belongs to Krishna. It belongs to my teachers. So I'm grateful to them that I'm able to be this way. So we always give the credit to whom it belongs. We don't just knock ourselves down by telling ourselves negative remarks in our own mind. So it's really important to chant. Chanting churns all those thoughts that we have been suppressing. Unless we start churning those thoughts, we can't make progress in spiritual life because we're always going to think less of ourselves or less about ourselves. So it's really important to be conscious. Srila Prabhupada said, be conscious before Krishna conscious. So reading helps us to evolve our consciousness, elevate our consciousness. Chanting gives us the opportunity to be able to churn those impurities in our thoughts and have them purified. Reading, hearing, and then association. Chanting, reading, and association. Being in a positive association. It is so important that we surround ourselves with people that see us for what we can become and not simply what we are. So much of our life is always based that we're always with people that just see us for who we are. And yes, human existence means an ocean of faults. We all have a fault. I have a fault. You guys, we all have a fault because we live in an ocean of a fault. The three biggest habits that people have is criticism, comparativeness, and complaining. People always complain about their circumstances, their situation. People always criticize just to make themselves feel better. And people always compare. Look at this person, what he has, look how I have. But the grass is never green on the other side. So we must choose association, people, for what spiritual, empowered beings we can become, and not just simply what dull, human being that we think we are. So it's really important that we choose positive association in our life. And we evaluate that on a regular basis to basis. We constantly evaluate, who am I surrounded by? And are they helping me to grow, to become more Krishna conscious? So, and when we can do this, then we actually learn, when we do this, we can overcome doing what we think is right for doing what is genuinely right. Did you get that? So often in our life, we go through doing what we think is right. But actually, whatever decisions and choices that we make in life, we should also always go through the Bhagavad Gita. We should always go through Krishna. We should always go through our spiritual teachers. We should go through this process because that helps us to make the right decisions rather than making decisions of what we think is right. So, and in that way, we can actually truly and really learn to satisfy the senses of the Lord. And the analogy Srila Prabhupada gives a perfect example of this is that, we're working so hard to gratify our senses, but trying to gratify our own personal senses is like watering the different branches of a tree rather than watering the root. We'll never be satisfied. We'll never be happy. Because our core purpose, our core reason, our core whole purpose of existence, we're not nourishing that. So we'll never be satisfied unless we nourish that core reason, that core purpose, which comes through sevak, service, devotional service. And lastly, I'll leave you with one thing, and then I can ask questions. There's a difference. Sometimes it's really important that we have some limitations in our life. The reason why it's so important is because, let's take, for example, a jail. Someone may commit a crime and may be taken to jail. And when he's taken to that jail is because he's been put in there in order to rehabilitate. Ideally anyway, to rehabilitate, to become a better person, whatever it is. But for the person that's being put in that jail, he may see it as a source of suffering. But then let's take someone that may be in a fort, a fort. And it looks the same externally, a jail, a fort, you're still in somewhere and you're stuck in there. But the fort is actually protecting that person from enemies outside. While the jail, someone may be suffering for the crimes that he has committed. So similarly, it's so important that, sadhana bhakti is so important. It's so important that we put some restrictions and limitations to our sense gratification. Because what it is that externally it may seem like, I'm living such a rigid life, such a dull life, such a boring life, so many rules and regulations of this to do, that to do. But later on, we actually realize that we're protecting ourselves from the greatest enemies outside, which are the enemies of the senses. So unless we find that actually limitations are healthy to some degree, they're a necessity, they're important, and we should try and practice, live our life and practice sadhana bhakti and really conduct our way with some limitations, then we will always suffer under the hands of the senses. And we will always go with our whimsical emotions. I want to be happy, I just want to be free, I want to be doing this, I want to be doing that, which there is no basis of wisdom to it. It's just what we feel. And what we feel is constantly changing all the time. What makes us happy today may not make us happy tomorrow. So let's try and be serious about spiritual life. And if we are practicing spiritual life already, let's try and really evaluate and see how we can go even deeper in spiritual life. It doesn't matter. The moment that we stop growing is the moment we tell ourselves I'm doing good. I'm okay. I've done a lot. No. We don't look back at what we've done. We look forward to what more we can do. Hare Krishna. So if you may have question, then please do ask. Asking question means you were listening. So I hope you do have questions. Does anyone have questions? We have 5 minutes, so maybe one question. Let's focus on one. Otherwise, even after Guru Arati or during Guru Arati, I'll be around anyway, so you can ask questions then. Okay, let's share. One person share one reflection before the curtain opens. Just one reflection from anyone. One thing that stood out for you that you really really appreciated that, and you're gonna take action on that. Anyone? Yes.
So I came here to study and do something that I can. But actually what I did, so I was graduated in 2014 and then I went into a job and got from there this kind of stuff. So I never seen myself so happy because once after another I see I need this,
Yeah.
everything like this. So when it's going to be and I never know, probably after that.
No, so that's the
The inner peace, just you mentioned before that. Inner peace is something to feel God.
Yeah. So I'd really encourage you, this is the problem in our society today. People are never satisfied and happy. because one goal after the other, one dream after the other, one success after the other, more wealth, more this, more that. But depression, suicide, unhappiness, everything is increasing. So I really urge you, and I really recommend you that if you're not chanting, start chanting. If you're not reading Srila Prabhupada's book, start reading. These are the things that will really transform your heart. There's no other way. Yeah. So I'll give you something after, but yeah. So I would really recommend that though. There's nothing. There's no quick fix. People they like quick fixes in life, but there's no quick fix to this. You have to put in endeavor, effort. You have to pray hard. You have to chant. You're welcome. Hare Krishna. Oh well, we have a few minutes, so like I said, I'll be around. So if you have any questions, any reflections, please do approach me.
I think the questions I have is, if 99% of the population is running after the wrong things and focusing on the wrong, then why is it so? Because,
I'll answer, but we literally have 1 minute, so I'll answer you. Yeah, like I said, so I'll be around. Because the curtain's going to open any moment, the conch shell will blow. But thank you so much for your time. Antaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nittai Gaur Pramanande. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki, Shri Shri Gauranitai ki, Shri Prabhupada ki. Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Arati Kashopa. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada. Haribo, Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhaktivedanta Manor this evening. So what you have just heard or sang along with was the Gaura Arti. On your top right hand side, here is a glorification of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So now we will be singing a prayer to Lord Nrsimha. His picture is just on your left hand side, the first one. He was a half man, half lion incarnation of Krishna, who killed a great demon who harassed his own son. So yeah, you can all sit down, and afterwards you can go into the reception. There's lots of boga there. It's all blessed food straight from the altar. So make sure you get some. Haribo.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlad Ladladayine. Hiranyakashipu Rakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito nasimho parato nasimho. Yato yato yamitato nasimho. Bahir nasimho hridaye Jaya